Hello. I am so excited to be here in my bedroom with one of my favorite people and very good friend, Heather Caliri. And you guys, I was just telling Heather that I've been wanting to do these interviews with people because I love telling people's stories. I love people's stories getting heard and seen. And I feel like I get the honor of hearing and seeing people a lot and always think like, oh, I want other people to hear this and to see this. Hi, Phil. I'm going to try to wave at you there. Okay. And Heather is someone who I've been so blessed by and honored to know. And my favorite thing right now that she's doing is calling herself an awkward Christian. So I can't wait for you guys to hear about Heather and why she considers herself an awkward Christian and her own just faith journey and struggle. And we're going to get started. Hi, Caleb. Thanks for being on there. Hi, Phil. Okay, so Heather, let's get started. Heather and I have known each other for about 7 years. Yeah, she's super awkward. Welcome to Life with Heather. And actually, it's funny because we met at our kids' charter school, and she stood out to me right away. I wanted to get to know her. We connected. We had kind of an instant connection, but then it took a little while. Like, it took some years of us just slowly getting to know each other. And now I would consider Heather one of my closest friends. And Heather awkwardly asked me if I wanted to be her prayer partner years ago.
Very awkward.
And I almost said no, because I was like, that's weird.
I didn't know that at the time. That's so awesome.
Yeah. She's learning something. And it wasn't because of you.
Yeah.
It wasn't like I was like, oh, Heather's too awkward to pray with. It was not that. It was actually, I didn't know that I wanted to pray every week with somebody out loud. I was in a weird space with my faith. And something about you and your confidence to ask me that, and also your, you were obviously different. You were okay with my being so weird about my faith, made me feel comfortable to do that with you. So I'm so grateful for you and grateful for your awkwardness.
Thank you.
And, hi, Arlene. Oh, Arlene is an amazing woman. And so I want you to tell people about yourself, which is way too big of a question. So let's just start actually with real quick about writing. Not that that's quick, but Heather's a writer. She's amazing. If you haven't read any of her stuff, you can find her at heathercaliri.com. But that's the first thing I think of when I think of you is that you're a writer. So talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go into faith and being an awkward Christian and anxiety, because your writing revolves around a lot of that.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Well, hello, everyone. It's really great to be here. So writing, I feel like in my life, there are all these things that I have secret draws to, but feel anxious about. So I tell myself, I can't do that. That's not me. So as a kid, I actually hated writing. It was one of my least favorite things to do in school. Yeah.
Amazing.
And I think because writing is so vulnerable that when you put yourself out there in that way, it exposes part of your heart. And as a kid, I was not ready for that. And as I got older, I realized, actually in college, I went into a writing class and started writing and felt, I think I was at the point where I really wanted to break out of the protective shell that had kind of held me safe as a kid. Yeah. And it felt like, it was like discovering a whole, like the jasmine flying on the magic carpet. It was like a new world really opened up in front of me, connecting with my ideas, connecting with who I was, connecting with my emotions in a new way. And so I just, the writing bug bit me, and I was like, I have to do this.
Wow. That was college?
That was my last year of college.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Fascinating.
So I continued to write, and I really feel like there's this continual process of me having these protective shells around me, and through writing and through other things, I realized that protective shell has to come off, that I have to take a step past it, that I have to crack out of it. Yeah. And writing has just in so many, I for a while was like, well, I will definitely write, but I won't write about faith.
Got it. Yep.
That's a no-go area. And then so surprisingly, I started writing about faith, and it was like, oh, that's a whole new world that I need to explore. Yeah. Like, I really need to be doing this. And then I was like, well, I'll write about faith, but I won't write about family or about my past. let's just say, like, every time I'm like, I really can't do that, that is probably the direction that I'm going to be going next. Yeah. So, I really have been blessed to have this kind of practice, and I think all of us have these different kinds of practices, whether it's parenting, whether it's, you know, being together in community with people that call us out of ourselves, that call us to live a more wide, alive, awake life, and that challenge us to get out of the protectiveness that we've been in and call us into the wider world. So that's what writing has been for me.
Wow. So breaking out of your shell, this protection. So why is it important to break out of that shell, would you say?
Because I think the shell serves us for a time.
Right.
You know, I had a lot of, in my family, there was a lot of chaotic stuff going on as a kid. And my way of coping was to be a high performer and to kind of lock all of my negative emotions and negative feelings up inside my heart. Yeah. And that worked to get me through childhood. Yes. But as a long-term strategy, let's just say being completely numbed out and like trying to like make the grade and everything, that was not a very good long-term strategy for mental health.
Right. Oh, really? Oh, mental
surprisingly
health.
enough.
Do we want to go there? So speaking of, you have a book about the post-perfectionist faith. Or a little booklet.
Yeah. It's like, I'd say like a novella.
Okay. Oh, I like it. So
a collection of short essays.
Okay, right. So I love that phrase, post-perfectionist faith. How did you come up with that? Why talk about being a perfectionist in your faith and then not being that, maybe, or trying to not be that?
Well, I would say so. Again, my as a child, my role in my family was to be the one who was succeeding. Right? And I became a Christian very much because I was so, just so sad and in despair about some of the things that were happening in my childhood and in my family. And Jesus very much offered a doorway out of that, a doorway into freedom. But the funny thing is, just because Jesus is awesome doesn't mean you don't bring all of your baggage with you into your faith, right? So I'm like, I am just going to power my way through this. I'm going to hit every note. You know, I did a lot of performing arts as a kid. I'm going to stand on stage and praise Jesus. And there was only so far I could go with that, right? Yeah. Thinking that my faith needed to look a particular way. Right. That I needed to be quote unquote successful with Jesus in order to be worthy. That I needed to have the right theology. I needed to have the right spiritual practices. I needed to have the right church attendance. I needed to have the right community. And if any of those things didn't look the way I expected, I assumed I was at fault. And I went through this faith shift of really realizing, there was one particular day where I realized I am not the Christian I want to be. I have all of these high expectations for myself, and I am like not even on the map of that. And it gutted me. I'd spent years feeling that way. And it was finally like I finally admitted it to myself and to God. And that very night I felt God's presence with me in a really intense way. I think because I had never really admitted to myself how hard I was trying and how I felt that trying hard never really
wasn't measuring up.
It was never measuring up. And until I admitted that to God, I was stuck constantly trying to climb this ladder. And finally I was like, I need to get off the freaking ladder. Yeah.
Right. This
no
is
more
a ladder
ladders.
that you constructed.
Totally. And so the day that I really admitted to myself, well, I'm not that Christian and I don't know whether I ever will be that Christian that I want to be. It was like I got off the ladder and God like met me there. That night, I was like literally face down on the floor. Yeah. Like, what do I do if I'm not that Christian? Yeah. And like suddenly I felt God with me in a way that I hadn't felt in years.
So that must have been scary too. You're saying it as if it was freeing, but I'm thinking it must have been
so
scary.
Terrifying.
Okay. Right. Okay. Talk about that.
Yeah. I mean, I just sat at my desk and I was like, maybe I'm not a Christian. Right. Because if I can't be that Christian, then maybe I'm not one. Maybe what I have doesn't count.
Oh, I know that so many people felt that way. Because I've felt that way. You've felt that way. I've talked to people who have. And
yes.
Okay, keep going. Come on. Preach it, girl.
I will.
I know. I love it. I love it.
Well, and I mean, the first thought that occurred to me was, well, what do I tell my husband? because, you know, we got married.
Yeah.
He's a faithful Christian, and that was a huge part of our connection together, our life together, you know, our community together. And I just thought, well, what if he can't handle this?
Yeah.
And I went downstairs that night and kind of shaking, and I was like, I don't think I'm the Christian I want to be, and I'm not sure I can be. And he paused, and he kind of was like, okay. And he was really honest, and he was like, sometimes I feel the same way too. And we started having, like, better conversations about it. I will be honest, like, that can, you know, for years, that's continued to be a challenge and something that we've grown into. I think now being able to hold each other's stories without judgment and without nervousness allows us to draw together in the way that I needed to. But that was a process for both of us, right?
Well, and isn't it weird how when you can respect each other for who you actually are and what you think actually, as opposed to who you thought you were,
what you're projecting,
supposed to be, how that actually, even though it's so scary, is so healing if you can do it well.
Totally.
Therapy helps.
Therapy really helps. Yay, therapy.
Yeah. Okay, so you know that I love all that. Let's talk about two different things I really want to make sure we talk about. Why you have chosen the phrase awkward Christian. And secondly, I want to dive into anxiety a little bit.
Yeah.
So, do you want to choose which one you talk about next?
Let's talk about anxiety. No, I'm sorry. Let's talk about being awkward.
Okay.
I like awkwardness.
Let's talk about awkwardness. That's so fun.
I've been trying to capture sort of the heart of what it is that I'm trying to communicate to people. Yeah. And actually, when I told my husband, Yami, that I was thinking about moving towards exploring being an awkward Christian, he's like, are you really sure that you want to, like, okay, I'm next up, like imagining me on Oprah, right? Like, next up, we're going to talk to Heather Caliri, the awkward Christian. He's like, are you sure you really want to do that? And I was like, yes!
I love it.
Yes, I love being an awkward Christian.
So good.
So I think there's two sides of that, right? So there's sort of the before picture, which is that you feel ill at ease with who you are, what your faith is, right? It's that I'm not the Christian I want to be. It's sort of this gap between who you actually are and where you want to go. And this chasm, really, not just a gap, a chasm, right? And you have tried to get across the chasm and it's not working. And it's just so awkward. It's ill at ease all the time with who you are and where you are at.
Okay.
And I felt that way for about a decade.
And does that play into the perfectionism thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Because you see this ideal, this expectation that you have. Maybe it's what your church has taught you. Maybe it's what you hoped for when you came to Jesus. It's just over there. And no matter how you've tried, you haven't reached that place. Right. And you haven't really even moved that much closer. It's like this distant land. So that's sort of the awkwardness that I think is destructive, right? Okay. I think, though, that there is a point where it's sort of like when you are in grade school or in junior high and you realize, like, oh, I'm in the nerd group and I'm okay with that. These people are kind of interesting, right? Like, I hang out with the geeks. Like, when I was in junior high, we used to play Duck, Duck, Goose on the lawn.
As a junior hire?
As a junior hire. Okay. And we would, like, drink, and as sort of a performative thing, like, we are so dorky that we don't care that we are junior hires playing Duck, Duck, Goose on the lawn in front of all of our peers. Good. And it was fun. That was the thing.
You were having more fun than the cool kids.
We were having more fun than the cool kids. Yeah, so I think
totally
that shift between, and before that moment, I was afraid of being an outcast, but there's something about when you find the other outcasts, and you were just like, I'm going to embrace this. Like, who cares if I'm a dork? That's fine. I'm kind of a nerd. Let's be honest. Yeah. Like, just embracing that. So that awkwardness can actually turn into a kind of ease with yourself. And an ability acceptance. And an acceptance of yourself, an acceptance that life is messy, that faith is messy, that sometimes we don't react the way we want to, that sometimes our theology doesn't make perfect, coherent sense, or it isn't the theology that we were raised with. Right. Those things, making peace with those things, instead of trying to perform a kind of Christianity that we think is what we need, we actually, like, I've been thinking about this a lot, we actually look down and we're like, oh, right here, this is holy ground where I'm standing.
so good.
Like, it's right. I have been standing here this whole time. I don't have to go someplace else to find it. I don't have to become someone else to find it. I can embrace the awkwardness of this moment and allow it to be what it is and be blessed by it. Be grateful for it.
Yeah. Well, and don't you find, I mean, I know I found this with you, that actually frees other people up to feel like they can be their own weird, amazing, awkward, messy self.
Totally. I'm in a small group, and I am consistently the one that says really awkward things like, I don't actually like the Gospel of John.
Yes, so good. I'm that person in my
Yes. Or, I don't actually feel like I ever can make time to pray for 5 minutes in the morning, which isn't entirely true, but no, to read my Bible in the morning. Like, that's just not going to happen right now.
Right.
And people look at me, like, and then they're like, yeah, me neither.
Okay, so, but I'm sure, I guess I'm not sure, I would think you also sometimes have, especially in church circles, also the somewhat like, and you're kind of judged for
nervousness,
that.
totally.
Either they're nervous or they actually look down on you. That's why we don't say those things, because we assume people will judge us. And I do think oftentimes the reality is they don't. They actually feel more free. But
oh no, people judge.
People judge, yeah. Okay.
People totally judge.
Which plays into the anxiety piece.
Yes.
So when you sense that, like, okay, that was too much for that person, they actually feel uncomfortable with the fact that I don't like the Gospel of John and are judging me for that.
Right.
Where do you go with that now as opposed to what you would have done, in college?
Yes. I think previously I thought if I was being judged, I needed to feel bad about myself. And
that's good.
And now when I feel judged, I realize that, number one, people can't see into my heart. They don't know where I am with Jesus very often. They don't know, like, I know the flourishing that has happened in my life over the last 5 years. I mean, guys, it's like really like resurrection. We're not using euphemisms here, right? Yeah. Real, like, palpable resurrection in my life. So knowing that, knowing the life and the flourishing that I've been living out over the last few years that I continue seeing God lead me into, I realize it's more about them than it's about me.
Sure.
And like,
absolutely.
I have seen people who genuinely have found, for example, daily Bible reading a really fruitful discipline. And they have not been at a place that doesn't work for everybody in the same way. I experienced spiritual abuse as a kid and other kinds of abuse as a kid. And those traumas shape your understanding of God and shape sometimes what you're capable of. It's all good. We're living the awkward life.
We are. Phone is ringing while we're having an interview.
So I know that they feel nervous because those rules, those practices have proved life-giving or safe for them, and they haven't been at a point where they understand why that isn't true for everybody. A lot of people really struggle with empathy, right?
Okay.
And so they can't see what I see. They can't see my experience, and their nervousness, their judgment is more about their nervousness than it's about me doing anything wrong. And again, like, maybe God will call me into new disciplines of reading my Bible for a half hour every morning. I don't know. Maybe that will happen. And maybe that will be something fruitful and life-giving. But until God does that, until that's something where I go into that space of reading the Bible every day for a half hour and feel flourishing from it, then I just know it's something I'm not called to.
Wow.
So I need to be really focused on the actual practical results of my theology and spiritual practices, and not what I think they should feel like.
Right.
And then let go of what other people think about that. Because really, like, let's look at Jesus. He wasn't exactly the guy who was getting all of the, like, spiritual tick marks.
No, right?
Right?
The exact
or Paul.
opposite.
I mean, like, just because you are following God's will does not mean everybody is going to approve of what you're doing. And that's okay.
Yeah. It's so hard, though. So hard to let go of that desire to be approved of.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
It gets easier, though. I think it gets easier.
Yeah. The more you find and what I'm hearing from you is just such a strong confidence in your own relationship with God and Jesus, and that has, like, overcome your need to feel confident in other people's approval.
Well, and I think all of these things, I think a large part of it is discernment, right? Discerning what actually works for you.
Okay.
Like, honestly, not what should, but what actually works.
Yeah. Okay.
And the results that happen with that.
Okay.
And continuing, that's kind of a positive cycle, right? I do something, I try this new kind of spiritual discipline. I feel really, really close and connected to Jesus without feeling stress. That draws me closer to Jesus, and therefore I'm better able to discern next time that I want to try something new. Oh yes, this is actually a helpful discipline for me, or it's not. So that kind of breeds confidence, and I really feel like as we grow in discernment with God, as we learn what works for us and what doesn't work for us, it's sort of, you learn to trust yourself. And then what other people think doesn't matter as much. And I think that's a muscle that we develop over time.
Yeah.
You know?
That's good. That's really good. Okay. So just a few more things here. Instead of us talking a lot about anxiety, because that's a whole other topic.
Yes.
That I love what you've written about it and how you've wrestled with that, and I know it's not ever something you'll totally overcome, but that you get to have those victories every day, those little yeses.
Yes.
So how about tell us and people, who are interested in overcoming or at least dealing with their anxiety, about your resources, and then that will let us hear a little bit about how you've dealt with it.
Oh yeah. Oh gosh.
Because I know you have some really good resources.
Oh yeah.
So Becoming Brave, Dancing Back to Jesus.
Yeah. Well, so the main thing that that I have on my website about anxiety is basically a mini course on dealing with anxiety in 5 very tiny, sort of almost mind shifts. I think one of the main things about anxiety is it's the same story about other things that I've been talking about. Thinking, when you feel anxious, especially as a Christian, you can feel like you're doing something wrong. Yes. That the anxiety should go away.
And the fact that you have anxiety is wrong.
The fact that you have anxiety is wrong.
Yes.
And I think instead of judging our anxiety, instead of saying, I should be this person over here that doesn't have anxiety.
Right. Yes, same idea. Huh?
We look down and we say, I have anxiety. This is super awkward, right? Yeah. I'm a failure. I do not feel peace and trust in Jesus in my circumstances.
I
shouldn't. Instead of feeling worried about that, you say, okay, all right, we have anxiety. What do we do about it?
Thank you for
right?
More than one person.
Right. So many people do.
Yeah.
So I think that transition from shaming ourselves for where we actually are to actually accepting where we are and saying, what can we practically do to deal with it is a huge mindset change.
Interesting.
So I have a free mini course on, you could go through it in about 5 days. It offers some journaling prompts and just very subtle shifts from the way that you see your anxiety with shame to seeing it as an actual tool. This is the crazy part, that can help you discern where God is leading you. Because I will tell you, if you start feeling anxious about something, you probably need to change up something because it's not helping you, right? So I often felt anxious about reading the Bible.
Yeah.
And I thought I shouldn't feel anxious about reading the Bible, so therefore I should continue reading the Bible in the same way. And funnily enough, my anxiety didn't go away. And when I finally stopped and said, why do I feel anxious about reading the Bible? I started realizing, I suffered spiritual abuse. I have a lot of problems with the way my church handled different terrible situations in the past, and I haven't mentioned that to anybody. I started actually dealing with the roots of that anxiety and healing them. And it doesn't mean that my anxiety about the Bible totally went away, but I know why I have it, and I understand ways of interacting with the Bible that do give me life. So maybe the personal study I don't do so much, but I do enjoy group study, or I do enjoy making art out of Bible verses and stuff.
Oh my gosh, you guys, Heather has such an amazing resource. I have to mention, are you offering both of them still?
I'm not sure. What resource?
Well, the Tear Your Bible Up one.
Oh, yeah. So I have yes, I have. The one that I'm still offering is for Lent specifically.
Okay, yes.
So it is basically a journey through Lent, and each week there is an art prompt. You can take an old copy of your Bible and you make an art project in a page of the Bible and tear it up.
It's so terrifying at first.
Yes, it's kind of terrifying.
Because, I was taught you don't even set your Bible on the ground.
Yes.
And so Heather has you go through this process of actually maybe even tearing pages out, maybe coloring on it. No,
I might have asked you to burn a page.
Burn a page. Yes. talk about like causing you to have to face why do I feel this way? Which things are hard for me? Which things do I love?
And I will say there may be some people for whom that's not a helpful discipline.
Sure. Don't do it.
Right? Like if it feels sacrilegious to you, if it feels like something that's pushing you away from God or pushing you away from faith in an unhelpful way, you can notice that and say, that's not for me.
Yeah.
But if it feels intriguing to you, and it feels like, for me, there was a copy of my Bible that was so fraught and so full of bad memories that I couldn't even open it.
Yes.
And I was like, I can't throw it away because it's so important. It was from a really important part of my faith journey.
Yes.
So it was sitting on it was like I couldn't even touch it. So I was like, well, this is better than throwing it away.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and how much more engaging does that help you to be with God, to like wrestle with it, to write in the Bible, to maybe scribble out parts of it that are hard for you, than to just say like, well, I guess me and God are out then.
Yes.
I guess I'm just going to, whatever, I don't know, live an apathetic life.
Yes.
Like
or
that's
disconnected or
opposite
numb
of
or whatever.
apathy, right? Even if it's a negative interaction, it's interaction, and God responds.
Yes. I think one of the things that happens in Christianity, especially in faith communities where Christianity is so central, sometimes we can get so careful, right? We think that we should be living the victorious life, so we are projecting all this victory. But the real truth is Jesus came to the earth in brokenness, right? He came to the poorest community. He came to the weakest nation. He came to a people that were oppressed, and he was not embarrassed or ashamed by any of that.
Wow.
So I think if we are willing to bring our anger, our rage, our disdain, our cynicism, if we're actually really willing to be honest about them and stop being ashamed by those feelings, we will discover intimacy with Jesus in a way that we heretofore would have thought was impossible.
It's so amazing that is so hard for us to grasp,
Yes.
at least here in America, and maybe other places too. I just know my own experience. But yeah, when you think about it, Jesus was completely shamed by the people who were supposedly doing it all right.
Yes.
And it's just so crazy how we twist that, and now we feel like we need to be the ones doing it all right and shame ourselves when we're not.
Yes.
So
It's
I
a
love
very
that
human
message.
impulse.
It's so good.
Yeah.
You guys, I'm sure see why I love Heather Caliri. All right, what have we not mentioned? So heathercleary.com, go there. You can get the free anxiety course.
Yes.
On her website, there's also some of her other resources. If you,
I have a shop. So if you go to the shop, you can
go shopping.
see other stuff.
Good. Also Heather, if you live locally, sometimes she does some local speaking.
Yes.
That's amazing. And she's such a good writer. There's going to be good stuff coming out, you guys. Be watching out for Heather Caliri because there's some big things coming in the future.
Yes.
With her writing. And thanks for those of you who are live. And if you have any questions for Heather, write them below. She's really great about responding. She's a great advice giver. And just real quick, my next interview is going to be about when Chuck Leslie bought a strip bar. So you'll want to tune in for that.
Not awkward at all.
No, it's super not awkward. All right. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Kate.
Yeah.